Hi everyone, I'm Ashton, and I wanted to put out this podcast, if you will, which I'm a bit leery of that term. To me, podcasts are all about audio and not about visual, so I don't really know why these are called podcasts when we crocheters and knitters do them, but that's what I'll call it for now. But I will be giving you this audio-visual experience, explaining a bit about why I make things, what my history is, and then also what projects I'm working on, what yarns I might be excited about, just generally what I'm doing in my creative process so that you can just follow along on the journey with me. So I can start off by kind of explaining where I've come from. I am a trained artist. I got my bachelor's in undergrad from Creighton University, which is in Omaha, Nebraska, which is where I'm originally from. So if you don't know where that is, it's smack dab in the middle of the United States of America. And I got my bachelor's in technically fine arts, but I really just focused on oil painting. And so I did that for about a few years. I was like getting my degree. And I also got a degree in graphic design. So I basically went in wanting to be an artist. And then because I listened to my parents a little bit too much, I was like, oh gosh, I have to find something that will sustain me. And then I discovered that about my third year in that I absolutely hated graphic design and it was going to crush my soul if I actually went into that line of work. And that's when I actually found out at the same time that I actually had already fulfilled 3/4 of the requirements for a fine arts degree. So I kind of just went down that path and I was like, oh, I'll figure it out once I graduate. And when I did graduate, I actually went and got my MFA from the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is in Baltimore, Maryland, which is now where I currently live. That is not where this video is being shot. I'm actually in Evergreen, Colorado, which is where my parents live. And so I'm visiting them now, and it's a beautiful scenery. I might show you outside, maybe, I don't know. But it's just beautiful here, and I wanted it to be the place that I showcased my first video. During my MFA, I learned how to crochet. So I was a painter, and then the MFA that I went into was for community art. And so basically it's, my definition at least, is that community arts is having an artist come into a community or into an area that may be seeking some kind of help or some kind of artistic process, or maybe not. And so that's normally not the best way of doing it. And then building projects that correspond with what the community wants. So I took it a bit more specific, and I was interested more in healing, specifically trauma, and how art could allow the healing process to be a bit more effectual. And so I was working in different recovery programs, using quilting, doll making, and all those other things that were very fiber-based, because I realized that it took me 6 years to be comfortable with my own painting style. And I didn't want anyone that was just with me for 10 weeks to think, oh my gosh, I can't express myself, I can't explain where I'm coming from, what I'm going through, because I don't have the basic modality of being able to represent what I want to represent. And so I didn't want that extra stress to come into play. And I think selfishly too, maybe it was something about I didn't want to give that gift away. I wanted to find something else. And also I just saw the MFA too as a way of me expanding my artistic repertoire, if you will. So I went in and I learned how to, I got really interested in textiles, I got really interested in fiber, and so I started making these dolls with women. I started making quilts, which was actually my thesis. My thesis was 2 parts, and so I was making these quilts with a group of women that were recovering, and then I was also making these pieces for myself. Basically what happened is that I learned about Mandy Greer, So disclaimer, anyone that I talk about in these videos, I will link below so that you can go and peruse their beautiful work and just like be totally immersed and excited and just inspired by what they do. Okay, end of disclaimer. So Mandy Greer is this wonderful artist based out of Seattle, and her work is just these just amazing crocheted pieces. And she might do some knitting in there too, but what I mostly see is crocheting. And so the first piece that I saw that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to learn how to do this, is this like crown headdress thing. So just imagine this like loop, almost like an embroidery hoop, just like the middle part of it on top of her head. And it's wrapped in this like kind of mohair-y looking yarn, so it has those like nice little halos on it. And then it's this beautiful little like spiraled spider web doily thing in the middle. And I don't know if it's crochet. I saw it and I was like, I have to figure out how to make it. I never figured out how to make it. I made something similar that I could then put into my own show, and you know, it wasn't exactly what I wanted it to be, but it was something, and it was special to me because it was something that I created. But basically, I just looked at her work and I was like, oh my gosh, you create so much work. Her sculptures are huge. Her pieces, her headdresses, her costuming are huge. And she does work with community sometimes. There's one piece that was all about water. And so she actually had her local community making all of these blue crocheted pieces together that she like sewed together or crocheted together in the trees to make like this giant river that like flowed through. So that was really cool. And she just has like knit ends and crochet ends where people can come and like make pieces, and then she incorporates those into her work. Okay, so enough about Mandy, because she's amazing and I could probably talk about her for forever. But so she was the main reference for why I learned how to crochet. And I basically just watched on YouTube because I didn't have any familial reference. No one in my family knew how to crochet. No one that's alive at least. And so I had to learn it all by myself. And I'm going to try and find the YouTube channel, and I'm going to link it below because the guy that I watched the videos from was the most straightforward and most helpful video instructor I have ever witnessed. And I was able to pick up crochet in like an hour. It was just really amazing. So I'm going to try and find him. I actually just found him again a few days ago when I was thinking about this video. So I'm going to try and find him again, and I'll link him below because I don't remember his name. But he has a lot of videos, and they're on a specific channel. I'll find it later. So then my history goes where I then moved into quilting. So I was making the quilts with the women for my thesis alongside these like crochet pieces, these like big garments that I made. And after I graduated from my MFA, I did this big quilting project with my now business partner in Baltimore, working with different recovery programs using quilting to express their stories. So we were in 4 different nonprofits in Baltimore, and it was a really great experience, like allowing people these spaces to just unpack and share and do what they need to do. And Claire, my business partner, and we were like, okay, we love quilting. We're going to like focus on this and do it a lot more. And then we realized that no one in our communities that we know could actually afford the hand-stitched, hand-dyed, crafted quilts that we had. So we were like, all right, if we want to make this into a business, we got to figure out something else. So we then established Wax and Weave Fiber, which is, I'll link that below too, which is my small business where we work on naturally dyed textiles. We don't work on them, we make them. So we work with natural dyes and we make these textiles. A lot of them are beautiful scarves. And we also make a lot of like wall adornments and table runners, just like basic things that are dyed natural dyes, and they're really beautiful, and they all have a little bit of magic to them. We like to incorporate a little bit of mysticism and a little bit of, I guess, just plants are magic. So just having that little bit in there is always really great. And so I moved into that. And I hadn't really been crocheting in that time span of working with those quilts. I kind of put it all away. My yarn was hidden in a box, and I didn't like think about it or look at it because I think I spent so much time on my thesis that I was like, no, I can't. I just can't anymore. And to clarify too, I also tried to learn how to knit, and I just couldn't figure it out. And then it was about 8 months ago, and I had an experience, another like beautiful, magical experience, like I did with Mandy Greer, where I saw West Knits, Stephen West's designs on Ravelry, I'm pretty sure, or somewhere else. And I was like, oh, okay, I have to figure out how to make that. And what I figured out is that I can't throw yarn. Like, I can't do it that way. But I can knit if I do it continental. So I learned that also on YouTube, most likely. I don't remember who I learned that from. But I learned it on YouTube, and then I just was able to like stitch away. And the piece that I found that I was so enthralled with making was Stephen's fringed shawl, which I will show some of those. I will show 3 pieces at the end of this video just to kind of give you an idea of what my aesthetic is and like where I am. And so yeah, I figured out how to actually knit, and I now can knit and crochet. I could knit by throwing the yarn, but I couldn't purl. It just wasn't making sense to me. But now with Continental, I can just do whatever I want to, and I can follow any pattern, and it's just been a really great and empowering moment for me where I was like, okay, now I can move forward and like do what I need to do. So that's been really great, and I'm excited that I now have another skill. I kind of just like keep adding skills to my little toolbox, if you will. I guess I'll just get into the actual pieces now. So I can show you the French shawl, which was really like a piece de resistance, I guess. It was allowing me to look at what I wanted to do with my life when it came to crocheting and knitting and figuring out, all right, these are like my aesthetics. This is what I want to do. So this is my version of the French shawl. I cannot follow a pattern ever. So I think on the original pattern it was 2 or 3 stripes maybe, and I was just like, no, I want more in there. There's these beautiful, you probably can't see. Just imagine, there's these beautiful like speckled yarns in here. There's a gray with speckles that's then been paired with this variegated rainbow. This quadrant up here is the variegated rainbow plus actually yarn that I've dyed. So this tealy color, which is registering a bit more blue on the camera, just imagine it's a bit more teal, was dyed by me at a yarn dyeing company that no longer exists actually. I was one of their testers for them teaching classes, and then they sadly had to go out of business. And then this one too, which you'll see this pop up again in another shawl that I'll show in a second. This is a nice like autumnal yellow, I guess you could say. It has yellow, it has brown, it has red, it has a little bit of orange in it. And I think that's why this scarf is so magical to me, is because I have 2 pieces in here that are dyed by me. And then I just went to my local yarn shop and I was like, all right, here's my 2 skeins that I have. I'm making this shawl, like what else can I put in it? And they gave me this variegated rainbow, which is just like everything that I wanted. And the sparkle was one that I found, and I was like, okay, this is gonna like make me super happy. And it was also really interesting too, because I was actually making this piece while I was at home, and so my mom was like watching me, and I finished, or I was about to be finished, and I was thinking about the fringe, so I was cutting all the fringe, and she was helping me cut the fringe. And she's like, are you gonna put fringe on every single part of it? So you can see there's these big like gaps, and that's very intentional because she encouraged me to not put them on every single loop. And I'm really glad that she didn't, because when it actually then bunches up on the body, it's just the right amount of fringe, and it's really great. I think if it was all over it, it would be too much. It would just be too much work. So that's the fringe shawl. And then moving back over, so that was knitting. And I've kind of like been trying to get more back into crochet just because that's kind of where it all started. And I wanted to experiment and see where I was now that I had this new like aesthetic goal. And just to roughly give you an idea, my aesthetic goal right now is either Joseph's Coat of Many Colors or going one step further and Joseph's Technicolor Dreamcoat. I feel like I have been so interested in adding as many different layers as possible, and I think this is partially to blame because of Stephen and seeing all of the color that he uses. But I'll even go further back and say I have been inspired by people like Kay Fassett, who's, I'll link him below. He's an amazing knitter, and I think he's been really one of the revolutionary people that's helped knitting become this like new and exciting thing again, and this like revitalization and beautiful yarn, and just seeing this change and shift from like only old ladies do it and they make beautiful things, and now like hipsters and 30-year-old like mothers, homesteaders are all like making these beautiful pieces, beautiful dyed yarns, and it's just like a really great time to be interested in yarn and be interested in things that you can make from yarn. So my other piece that I have no idea how this is going to register on this camera is, after Stephen, I wanted to do something with crochet. So yeah, like this like bright stuff is highlighter. It's the Hedgehog Fibers highlighter color. And then I got this magenta to pair with it. And then this variegated purple down here. As you can see, it's a little fringe. This is a pattern by a woman named Bernadette, and her last name starts with a P, and I just don't know the last name, but I will link her below. And to go back to the Kay Fassett revitalizing knitting, as I've been looking at patterns for crochet, I feel like I haven't seen that same kind of revitalization, that same renaissance happen in the crochet world. I still feel like when you go through Ravelry and you look up crochet patterns, you still see a bunch of things that are like the yarn. It's not even that the yarn is acrylic, because I don't care if it's acrylic or if it's wool. I use both, like both of them are in this. It's more of the color, and it's usually that like not existent yellow, not existent pink, like these colors, these very like baby filled colors that just seems to have plagued, I guess, the crochet world for so long. And there's something about the stitching too, that you can get it so much flatter with knitting, but you can't get it necessarily as flat with crochet. And when I found Bernadette's stuff on Etsy, I was actually really excited because for once I was finding something that was really inspiring me and encouraging me to continue with crochet, to make these pieces that were as inspirational as the Stephen West stuff or anything else. And I'm so limited in my knowledge of designers of knitwear and stuff that I'm probably going to reference like 3 people and then that's it. But that's just for this first video. I feel like I'm going to be so much more knowledgeable as I get older, I guess you could say. But yeah, so an interesting familial history is that it was only after I started crocheting and knitting that I actually found out that there actually was artistry in my family. Up until then, I only knew my family as farmers. My grandparents on both sides were farmers, or they lived on farms, or there was always just like this farm life. And there was never this understanding to me that people actually were creating things. So my great-grandmother, she crocheted doilies, which is like ridiculous. And sadly, I don't think we have any of her doilies. But just to think that she was using such small crochet hooks and such small little yarn, and she was just making these doilies over and over and over again. And she also would just hand piece these quilts. And actually, I'm actually recording this in my sister's room. And her bed and then my bed are both actually covered with these quilts that my great-grandmother made. And only until recently did we even know that she even made quilts or she even quilted anything. So it's just been interesting as I've been like delving more into yarn and into fiber that I'm like learning about these histories. And then my grandmother, so that was my great-grandmother on my mom's side, and my grandmother on my father's side actually crocheted Afghans. And once again, we don't have any of those Afghans. But it's just been interesting to know that there was a crochet history that I kind of remember, because she was really sick before she died, and she died when I was pretty young. And so she was really immobile, or just not able to, she didn't have a lot of energy. And so she didn't really crochet the Afghans as much. She might have done it when I was like really young, so my memory wasn't that great. But yeah, she definitely had a big amount of these Afghan blankets that I don't know where they are now. And I wish that I had one, even though I do kind of remember them being really scratchy. So I don't know if I'd actually like want to use it, but I wanted to maybe probably decorate something in my apartment just to have that kind of reference. So the final piece that I'm going to show is actually the piece that I'm probably the most excited about. I'm the most excited because when I get back to Baltimore, which will be in a few days, I'll actually have my camera cord, because my mom and dad and I went up to the mountains yesterday and we documented. So the aspens are changing. If you don't know about aspens, they're these like tall, spindly, like almost birch-looking trees with these eyelets almost on them. There's a bunch of eyes on them. And when they change colors, it's this magnificent golden, yellow, orange. It just starts moving into orange later. And so there's these big pockets of aspens all over, and they like higher altitude. And so you'll go higher up and you'll just see more of them. And we found a bunch of these fields, all this yarn. It's getting stuck in my nose. All of these pockets of aspens, and we were able to record these. And this piece was the one that recorded the best. So this is actually a piece that I have back on loan right now, if you will. It's actually a prayer shawl that I made for a work colleague of mine at my other job that I haven't talked about. And then my friend, she had this pretty invasive neck surgery, and so I wanted to make a prayer shawl for her to use as reference, or not as reference, to use as security, I guess. But as you can see, that yellow that I made is this one. So you can see it at a much more beautiful and saturated level, where there's not another piece of yarn variegated inside of it. So this has like a nice little like speckle to it. This just like, it registered so well with the aspens. It was just amazing. So I have a lot of like really beautiful pictures of this one, and the other two as well. But this one was the one that was like, okay, this has been a real inspirational piece for me, because it was me actually taking that Technicolor dream coat, that coat of many colors aesthetic, and like really figuring it out and finalizing it. I had this skein of yarn. It was this variegated rainbow with these speckles in it in my stash for like 2 years. And I was like, okay, I'm going to use it on this piece. And then paired with this, it just turned out really wonderfully. This is all crocheted, and it's super wonky because I use so many different weights of yarn, and I love it, and I would do it again. And I'm so thankful that my friend allowed me to take this back so I could document it, and then I will give it right back to her. Her health is much improved. She's been recovering for quite some time. And so I'm just really excited that I got this back, and that I can then give it back to her, and she can then use it for further comfort and support. And yeah, so those are my 3 pieces. I hope that gives you an example of what I'm really inspired about doing. I don't really like neutrals that much. I like these like bright pop-out colors. And so that's what I use mostly in the work that I just kind of experiment with. In the next few weeks, I guess I'll be showing you the next projects that I'm working on, which actually is a neutral thing. I just said I don't like neutrals, and I actually have one on my needles right now. A pair of fingerless gloves that I'm learning the magic loop method, which is really interesting. And then I'm going to be starting on a bunch of Christmas presents for family and friends. I'm going to be doing a pair of yoga socks. So super easy, like foray into sock making. We've been making these, I guess another pair of socks. These, I think I'll probably link it below. It's this free pattern for these Arizona flip-flop socks. So it's basically like this patch of things that just has a little hole for your big toe and the rest of your toes, and then you stick it on there. And so it's like it allows you to still wear your flip-flops, but like be a little bit warmer. And then I'm working on the fingerless gloves. And then I have a big, beautiful crocheted piece that I'm actually going to be making for my partner. And that will be starting, I guess I have the hook size. I just need to actually print off and get the yarn that will be good for the actual piece. So those are some of the projects that I'm working on. And I'm just interested to keep delving into the crochet world and see how I can make it be a beautiful aesthetic experience for anyone involved. And if any of you have recommendations of people that I should look at for really outstanding or inspirational crochet, I would love to see it. And I guess I'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning into this first introductory video. And I will hope to make it as inspirational for you next week. Say goodbye to these beautiful things. All right, I'll see you next week.